If I were to tell you that one of the most impressive in the entirety of the history of the Bible, sacred relics. However, the Ark of the Covenant did not disappear, which many people perceive to be a mystery, but instead arrived in Ethiopia, and what would happen if it was concealed in the story of how it arrived there. A book that the Western Church refuses to allow because centuries the Kaban Nagast is an ancient text written in Ethiopian that goes beyond and beyond the Bible story of the Queen of Sheba's visit to King Solomon. This book doesn't only digs into the relationship between both of these renowned characters, but in addition to tells the story of how their union resulted in the Ark of the Covenant being stolen from Jerusalem to Ethiopia, where according to the Kaban Nagast, it continues to this day. With today's video, we're delving deep into the Keen Ost, investigating its hidden details about the Ark, Solomon and the Queen of Sheba, and how this narrative has influenced Ethiopia's spiritual identity for centuries. This is a narrative that's been withheld from many for millennia, but today we're uncovering it together. If you're curious about additional banned books from the Ethiopian Bible, we've left links to videos we've already made in the description below. And if there's a particular text you'd wish for us to explore in more detail, send a comment. We'd be glad to go deeper into these wonderful secret stories. But now let's get into this incredible tale that's been withheld from you for centuries. The story of the Kra Nagas and the Ark of the Covenant, the tale of the Queen of Sheba and King Solomon. King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba is a familiar one found in 1 Kings 100:1 through 13, and 2 Chronicles 91 through 12, where a powerful queen fascinated by Solomon's fame and wisdom travels to Jerusalem to meet him in the Bible. The Queen of Sheba's visit is depicted as a test of Solomon's wisdom, and she leaves impressed by his excellent knowledge, thanking the deity of Israel for placing such a great king on the throne. But the Kra Nagas tells a considerably richer and deeper tale, according to this ancient Ethiopian text. This meeting was more than just merely a diplomatic visit. It was part of a divine scheme that would profoundly impact the spiritual landscape of Ethiopia in the Bible. The Queen of Sheba's role ends when she returns to her own land. Yet in the Kaban Ast, her tale is only beginning. According to this text, she is not only a visitor testing Solomon's wisdom, she becomes his lover, and their union leads to the birth of Menelik Thea, the first emperor of Ethiopia. The Kran Nagast gets into far greater depth than the Bible, describing how Solomon and the Queen of Sheba, who in Ethiopian custom is titled Makeda, build a link that is more than political. They are brought together by divine troops, and their union is believed to be decreed by God. The scripture recounts that after Solomon impresses the queen with his wisdom and knowledge of God, he asks her to stay in his palace. Their bond deepens, and they eventually spend the night together, leading to the conception of a son. Menelik. This portion of the narrative is absolutely lacking from the Bible, where there's no mention of Solomon having a kid with the Queen of Sheba. The Keen Nagas portrays this union as part of a bigger divine mission, suggesting that Menelik's birth was not merely a regal succession, but the beginning of Ethiopia's spiritual inheritance. Following the birth of Menelik, the Queen of Sheba returns to Ethiopia. When Menelik comes of age, he desires to visit his father Solomon and travels to Jerusalem in the Kabra. Nagas, this trip is defined as divinely ordained, and Solomon immediately recognizes Menelik as his true heir. This recognition of Menelik as Solomon's son is essential to the Ethiopian claim name of a Solomonic dynasty, a bloodline that spans from Menelik B down through generations of Ethiopian monarchs featuring Haile Selassie. The last emperor of Ethiopia, this divine lineage establishes Ethiopia's kings, not simply as rulers but as descendants of King David through Solomon, granting them a sacred right to rule, decreed by God himself. The biblical story, by contrast, makes no mention of any such journey or link between Solomon and a son in Ethiopia. In fact, the Bible's silence on this matter makes the claims of the Keen Nust even more intriguing. How did this tale evolve, and what does it mean for Ethiopia's importance in biblical history? In the Bible, the narrative of the Queen of Sheba is relatively short. She tests Solomon, marvels at his wisdom, and praises the deity of Israel before back to her own nation. There's no suggestion of a closer relationship or a shared divine destiny between the two kings. But in the Kran Nus, this meeting is transformed into a pivotal time. In biblical history, the text believes that Ethiopia was chosen by God to inherit the wisdom and heavenly grace that was conferred onto Solomon and Israel. This affects the political unity into a spiritual covenant between the two nations, with Ethiopia taking on a new duty as a guardian of God's will on earth. The birth of Menelik is characterized as God's purpose to spread his wisdom and protection to a young nation, one that would carry forward divine realities from Israel. But in a fresh Ethiopian context, this is where the narrative takes an even more amazing turn. The Kebra Nagas claims that when Menelik visits Jerusalem as an adult, he does more than merely meet his father. According to the book, Solomon offers Menelik the possibility to stay in Jerusalem and inherit his throne. But Menelik, guided by divine insight, decreases, preferring instead to return to Ethiopia. Unfortunately, Menelik does not return alone in a covert and holy mission. Menelik and his people take the Ark of the Covenant. The sacred chest contains the 10 Commandments signifying God's presence on earth, and bring it with them to Ethiopia. This assertion is one of the boldest made by the kin Ost in the Bible. The Ark remains in Jerusalem during Solomon's reign, located in the holiest of holies in the temple. Following the Babylonian exile, the Ark's fate becomes an enigma, having no explicit mention of its whereabouts in the canonical texts. Yet the Kran Nagas gives an answer to this mystery. The Ark was flown to Ethiopia, where it has been kept ever since under divine protection. What do you think about the Keen Nagas allege that Menelik brought the Ark of the Covenant to Ethiopia? Although the Bible is silent on the fate of the Ark of the Covenant following the Babylonian exile, the Kra Nagast gives of Menelik with the Ark of the Covenant tale that is both stunning and profoundly steeped in Ethiopian spiritual. According to this passage, the Ark didn't disappear or get lost. It was divinely transferred from Jerusalem to Ethiopia by none other than Menelik I, the son of Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. But how did this happen? What does this story mean for Ethiopia's standing in biblical history? And why would God's most sacred relic, the emblem of his covenant with Israel, be transferred to Ethiopia? Let's find out. The Kbra Nagas picks up after the Queen of Sheba's return to Ethiopia and the birth of Menelik I. When Menelik grows, he feels a deep divine pull to return to Jerusalem and meet his father, King Solomon. This journey, as described in the Keen Ast, is not merely a son seeking his father. It's the beginning of a sacred purpose devised by God. When Menelik arrives in Jerusalem, he is welcomed by Solomon, who acknowledges him as his true heir. According to the Kbra Nagast, Solomon offers Menelik the opportunity to remain in Israel and inherit the throne, but Menelik declines, feeling that his destiny lays in Ethiopia. This judgment is presented as divinely inspired, indicating that God's plan for the Ark was not connected to its continuous presence in Jerusalem. The important event of this narrative is the covert translocation of the Ark of the Covenant from Jerusalem to Ethiopia. The Kebra Nagast states that as Menelik prepared to return to his homeland, a group of priests and followers under divine guidance decided to take the Ark of the Covenant with them. They performed this discreetly without Solomon's knowledge, but it is portrayed as God's will, not an act of stealing in the Kbra Nagast. This occurrence is portrayed as a holy mission ordained by God. The Ark, which housed the 10 Commandments and symbolized the very presence of God among his people, was now entrusted to Menelik and his successors. According to the text, this move was part of God's purpose to establish Ethiopia as a new spiritual core, assuring that the Ark would be safe for far from the conflicts and invasions that would plague Jerusalem in the centuries to come, as Menelik and his disciples journey back to Ethiopia. The Kebra Nagast tells how they were divinely protected every step of the way. The Ark's relocation was no ordinary event. It was accompanied by extraordinary signs that confirmed God's acceptance of the mission. The text recounts that the priests and Levites who accompanied Anik were flooded with divine delight as they acknowledged the significance of their task. They were carrying the most holy item throughout all of Israel's history, and they recognized that this was part of a new covenant, one that included Ethiopia in God's unfolding plan for the globe. The voyage itself is considered as symbolic, just as Israel had carried the ark across the wilderness during the time of Moses and Joshua. Today, Ethiopia was entrusted with the solemn obligation of protecting God's presence on earth. The Kra Nagast makes it apparent that this was no mere migration. It was a spiritual mission, signaling Ethiopia's new role as a guardian of the faith. The Kibra Nagast doesn't only say that the ark was transported to Ethiopia, it also establishes Ethiopia as the rightful protector of the Ark of the Covenant, a role that bore great theological importance in the Bible. The Ark was the sign of God's covenant with Israel, located in the Holy of Holies within Solomon's temple. It was the most sacred object in the Israelite faith, expressing God's presence and his law. But in the Kra Nagast, this sacred responsibility is shifted to Ethiopia. The text presents Ethiopia not as a rival to Israel, but as a continuation of God's divine purpose. With the ark now in Axum, Ethiopia becomes the new spiritual center of the covenant, a role that, according to the Kra Nagast, was preordained by God himself. This is a significant deviation from the biblical tale, where the ark is related to the fate of Israel and Jerusalem. In the Kra Nagast, Ethiopia is portrayed as a selected nation assigned to protect the ark in the wisdom of Solomon for future generations. The ark's presence in Ethiopia is viewed as a blessing, ensuring God's protection and favor upon the Ethiopian people. The Kra Nagast introduces the idea that Ethiopia, by becoming the guardian of the ark, gets a divine legacy that was once solely Israel's position, says that Ethiopia is a component of God's plan in a unique and powerful method. The Solomonic dynasty, through Menelik, is positioned as a divinely selected line one that conveys the blessing of Solomon and the knowledge of God. This idea undermines traditional biblical theology, where the covenant is concentrated on Israel and Jerusalem. But for Ethiopians, the Kra Nagast signifies a sacred fact that their nation was selected by God to play a vital role in the spiritual destiny of the globe. This religion has affected Ethiopian religious identity for millennia. The claim that the ark sits in Ethiopia has made the nation a spiritual beacon in Eastern Christianity, with many Ethiopians perceiving themselves as spiritual keys to Israel, responsible for safeguarding God's presence on earth. If you're interested by these hidden stories, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel for further digs into the banned books of the Ethiopian Bible we've already covered. The Book of Enoch, the Book of Jubilees, and much more. You can discover the links in the description. With the Ark of the Covenant presently in Ethiopia, as claimed by Keen Ost, the stage was set for a new spiritual era, one that the Solomonic dynasty and Ethiopia's divine legacy would not only affect the destiny of Ethiopia, but also its royal lineage, the transportation of the ark to Ethiopia. Ethiopia wasn't just a matter of maintaining a sacred thing, it was the foundation for the growth of the Solomonic dynasty, a royal line that would trace its ancestry back to King Solomon and Menelik I. For nearly 1,000 years, Ethiopia's emperors claimed divine validity through their link to Solomon. This lineage provided them not just political power, but also spiritual authority, as they regarded themselves as the protectors of the ark. But what does this signify for Ethiopia's place in the biblical narrative? And how did the ark's presence in Ethiopia influence the nation's religious identity for centuries, according to Kra Nagast? The birth of Menelik B to Solomon and the Queen of Sheba was no ordinary event. Men's royal bloodline wasn't merely a matter of blood, it was a question of divine will. His birth started a new dynasty, one that carried Solomon's wisdom, but also the blessing of God. The Solomonic dynasty, which traces its roots to Menelik F, became the royal house of Ethiopia for millennia, until the fall of the monarchy in the 20th century. For Ethiopians, this dynasty wasn't only a political institution, it was God-ordained, a direct continuation of the Davidic line of rulers in the Bible. The Davidic kings of Israel and Judah reigned under a divine mandate. God promised King David that his descendants would sit on the throne forever. 2 Samuel 7:16, and this covenant was central to Israel's conception of God's relationship with his people. The kings, the Judah descendants of David, were seen as guardians of the covenant in the spiritual life of Israel. The Kra Nagast builds on this idea. But instead of the Davidic line continuing mainly in Israel, the text suggests that the Solomonic line in Ethiopia forms part of that divine covenant by tracing Ethiopia's emperors back to Solomon and David the Cron. Nagast establishes Ethiopia as a spiritual successor to Israel, with its kings functioning as God's appointed rulers on earth. This divine power to reign wasn't only symbolic. The Solomonic dynasty was seen as having a holy duty to safeguard and keep God's rules, exactly as the kings of Judah were charged with defending the temple and the Ark of the Covenant in Jerusalem. The presence of the Ark of the Covenant in Ethiopia enhanced the role. Among the Solomonic kings, beyond that of political rulers, they become spiritual guardians charged with protecting the holiest relic in biblical history. This gave the kings of Ethiopia an unbreakable relationship to God's will, making them not just rulers of a nation, but also the guardians of the divine covenant. This job was central to the identity of the Ethiopian monarchy, the Ark. Once the cornerstone of Israel's spiritual life, now became the core of Ethiopia's spiritual mission. By claiming the Ark, Ethiopia claimed a direct link to God's presence, establishing itself as the new protector of his covenant on earth. This spiritual authority continued throughout Ethiopia's history, with each new ruler considering himself as the protector of the Ark and the protector of the faith. The King Nagast goes so far as to imply that this mission was part of God's huge strategy, not just for Ethiopia, but for the world. The significance of the Ark didn't simply impact Ethiopia's monarchy, it also impacted the development of the Ethiopian Orthodox Church. The church, which traces its origins back to the early days of Christianity, considers the Ark as a sacred relic and a fundamental feature of its spiritual heritage. The KBRA Nagast says that the Ark is still in Ethiopia, located in the Church of Our Lady Mary of Zion in Aksum for generations. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church has claimed to be the protector of the Ark, and this belief continues central to the faith of many Ethiopians. The Ark is considered such sacred that just one guardian monk is allowed to witness it, and its presence is believed to offer divine protection to the full nation. This relationship between the Solomonic dynasty, the Ark, and the Ethiopian Church established a powerful spiritual alliance. The kings reigned with the blessing of God, and the church ensured that the trust of the people remained focused on their job as the guardians of God's covenant. The KBRA Nagast doesn't simply look back, it also looks forward. The text suggests that Ethiopia's duty as the protector of the Ark is part of a bigger divine prophecy. Ethiopia, according to the text, is intended to play a significant part in the end times when the Ark of the Covenant will be revealed to the world. This conviction has shaped the religious identity of Ethiopia for millennia. The Cust believes that Ethiopia's destiny is connected to the Ark, and that the Solomonic dynasty was founded to preserve it till the allotted hour for many Ethiopians. This isn't only a historical belief, it's a live prophecy, one that continues to impact the nation's awareness of its spiritual mission. The Solomonic dynasty governed Ethiopia for centuries, with each emperor tracing their lineage back to King Solomon and Menelik Bur. Nevertheless, in 1974, the monarchy fell and Ethiopia converted into a republic. The last emperor, Haile Selassie, was overthrown, ending the longest reigning monarchy in history for many. The fall of the Solomonic dynasty raised suspicions about Ethiopia's divine destiny, if the kings were chosen to protect the Ark. What did this transfer in political power signify for Ethiopia's spiritual role? Some see the fall of the monarchy as part of a new phase in Ethiopia's spiritual mission, while others considered the monarchy's fall was a brief setback, with Ethiopia still destined to play a role in the end times. Despite the abolition of the monarchy, the belief in the Ark's presence in Ethiopia stays strong. The Church of Our Lady Mary of Zion continues to guard the Ark, and the Ethiopian Orthodox Church still regards itself as the spiritual custodian of God's covenant. What do you think about Ethiopia's claim to the Ark of the Covenant? Could the Solomonic dynasty truly be part of God's plan for the Ark's safekeeping? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. What does the future hold for the Ark of the Covenant? Might Ethiopia's role in guarding the Ark be part of a greater prophecy? Yet to unfold, the KRA Nagast leaves us with more than just a historical narrative. It pointed to a future where Ethiopia plays a key part in the end times, when the Ark's presence might once again be exposed to the world for centuries. The mystery of the Ark has fascinated the imagination of believers across the globe, but the Kabra Nagast affords us a glance into a narrative that the Western Church never told, a narrative of faith, prophecy, and divine destiny. May it be that Ethiopia has the key to one of the greatest secrets in all of biblical history. And what might it mean for the world if the Ark of the Covenant is ever released? We'd love to know your opinions. Post a comment below. Do you believe the Ark could truly be in Ethiopia? Does the Keen Nagas change the way you think about biblical prophecy and Ethiopia's role in it? Let's continue this conversation in the comments, and if you've enjoyed exploring this hidden story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and watch our other videos on the books of the Ethiopian Bible we've already covered, the Book of Enoch, the Book of Jubilees, and more. Locate the links in the description below. Thanks for watching Bible History.